Hey everybody, it's me, Zach, and welcome back to my channel.
Who is that they, them on my screen?
Hey everybody, today we're here to talk about Rosie and her involvement in the Big Girls Wanted Escaping Paradise docu-series that we've been talking about for a minute over here on the Zachary channel and in Girl World at large. I think lots of people are having conversations about this docu-series. And before we get too far into it, I do just want to say that there will be conversations related to other people's trauma regarding sexual assault, feederism, mental health related things, and probably more. So just make sure that you are in a space where you feel like you are mentally and emotionally prepared to listen to conversations about these things. This morning, I watched all 3 of the 42-minute long episodes of the new docu-series Big Girls Wanted Escaping Paradise. That's 126 minutes total, or a little over 2 hours if you add it all up. And for the past couple of weeks since the trailer dropped here on YouTube, the YouTube content creator Quirky Love Rosie has been centering herself in conversations surrounding the Pearadise house and the documentary. This includes things like going on a TikTok live stream panel hosted by Stefan, the main subject matter that is the one perpetuating violence in this docu-series. And after doing all of that for the past few weeks since that trailer came out, do you know how long Quirky Love Rosie was even in this documentary? 1 minute and 14 seconds. 1 minute and 14 seconds out of 126 minutes total. That's how long Rosie was either visually on the screen or you could hear her voice. Now, before I start talking too much about Rosie specifically, I do just want to say that I came into this docu-series with some limited information about the Pearadise house and the allegations surrounding it. Prior to the trailer dropping, the most that I knew about it was actually in relationship to Xiomara. I had seen some stuff because of her involvement, or well, not even her involvement, but because Tommy slash Emily, a person who dates another YouTuber I cover, she was in Xiomara's live stream once upon a time, so I learned a little bit about Xiomara. I learned about Xiomara's relationship with the Pearadise house and how it was controversial that the people from Pearadise came to her hospital, took her out to buffets and things like that. And of course, over the past couple of weeks, I have learned a little bit more here and there through the discourse that Rosie and even other creators that I cover like Amberlynn and Chantal had involved themselves in. Amberlynn had gone on a live stream panel with Stefan, and Chantal was very quick to blame the women that participated in the Pearadise house for the things that happened to them. She has since attempted to retract that statement, but nevertheless, she did it. So yeah, because of those things, I had some idea of the type of person Stefan was. I knew enough that I didn't want anything to do with him. He even commented on one of my videos saying he'd be willing to do an interview at one point, and I was like, no. No, the little information I have about you, I'm not interested in anything like that. So I had some kind of idea, but I do need to say that I was not prepared to learn about some of the really monstrous things that Stefan did to these women. And to that extent, if you are finding this video because you want to learn more about the Pearadise house or things related to the docu-series, I do want to preface that I don't consider myself any kind of expert in that subject matter outside of I watched the same docu-series as you did. But this video is going to be more about one of the quote-unquote experts that the docu-series used to talk about feederism, i.e. Quirky Love Rosie, also known as Rosie. And while I will reference some things that were said or done in the docu-series, I don't really have much else to add in terms of commentary, outside of saying that I think Stefan is a sick individual and I think he absolutely needs to be held accountable in some kind of way. His compound needs to be shut down. And honestly, I think platforms like TikTok should really consider their monetization of him on their platform, because it's clear that he utilizes that as a tool to bring new women into the fold, into the house, and sells them on this fantasy only to end up manipulating them, and in some cases, as shared in the docuseries, by women who were making these allegations, assaulting them. Now, if you're only here for Rosie, you're gonna quickly find out she played such a little tiny part of this. Well, you might have already figured that out because I told you already, she was only in the docuseries for 1 minute and 14 seconds. And to that extent, I do feel like I'm doing some level of a disservice to the victims who shared their story by creating more content that, in this case, centers Rosie and her relationship to the series. I do hope that me talking about this will bring more attention to the actual survivors of Stefan and the actual people who were impacted by his behavior. And because of that, I really want to urge people to go and watch the actual series if you haven't watched it outside of Girl World commentary on it. I'm covering Rosie because that's what we do over here on this channel, amongst some other things, but like I cover her as a part of my channel, and as such, I'm going to talk about her in relationship to this docuseries. But I think that the women that shared their stories were incredibly courageous in sharing that. And if Rosie did anything for these women, I think it is the fact that she got Girl World invested in this docuseries to sit down and watch and listen to these women and hear their stories. Because to be honest, I'm not much of a true crime docuseries kind of girly. I don't usually watch a lot of content like that, and very likely would not have watched this if it wasn't for Rosie's involvement in it. Now, before we get too far into Rosie's actual participation in the docuseries and what that looked like, I think it'd be helpful to take a look at all the things that Rosie's had to say about her participation in this since she found out that she was going to participate in it, leading up to the actual docuseries premiering last night. And we can start with her time in Las Vegas when they flew her out to Las Vegas to film her portion of this documentary. I think one important thing to bring up is that she talked about this trip as being a business opportunity.
I'm here for a business thing. Hi, Liz. This is a business trip.
Where are you from?
Florida.
Florida?
Yes. You what?
What brings you here?
I had a business opportunity, so I did that yesterday, and I've got a few hours to kill before my flight heads out. So I wanted to check out the Hello Kitty Cafe, and I think I'm gonna hit the Coke store and the M&M store too before I go.
I think it helps really explain the mindset that she clearly was thinking about this documentary in. It doesn't seem like she was approaching this from a place of like, yeah, I genuinely want to bring light to what happened to these people. And it's clear that she saw this as something that was going to elevate her platform, her online content, and maybe bring in some more views for her. Which is fine if that's the case, I guess, but it certainly is a different story than I think what she wants people to think about her involvement in the docuseries. While she was on this trip in Las Vegas, she vlogged her experience, and by vlogged her experience, I mean she showed her eating bed.
I am officially in the hotel. I have my sleeping bed and my bullshit bed. So my suitcase is on the bullshit bed. I saw a TikTok the other day who was like, somebody who was in a hotel by themselves, and she was like, this is my sleeping bed and this is my eating bed, and like low key that's what's gonna happen here. I'll be over here when I'm eating so I can keep this bed clean. If I'm even eating in the room.
And then she spent a good chunk of her time showing herself eating in Las Vegas.
For my first dinner in Vegas, I ended up choosing Lazy Dog Bar. The food looked really good, and I was just kind of cruising around, and I wanted to try something like I've never had before. So I don't even normally like deviled eggs, but I was so intrigued by these crispy deviled eggs. I got some Brussels sprouts for, health. So healthy. You can tell all the health all over those Brussels sprouts, but they're gonna taste delicious. And then I got barbecue bison meatloaf, and there's like string onions. I thought I got the version without ice cream because I don't want ice cream. I really don't. But this is an apple huckleberry pie for dessert. So I don't know if I'm gonna finish all this or not, but this just like take a minute, gander at this, please. This is $6, which I think for the specialty novelty is worth it, especially if it tastes good. So let's find out. I debated long and hard about if I was going to actually pay for this, but I want the experience, so let's try a bite together. Oh. Oh, that's amazing. I want to do like a little bit of trying some of this stuff and just kind of giving a little bit of a review, I guess. I don't know if this will actually make it into the vlog or not, because this is treading a little lightly in what I'm trying to do here.
This is treading a little lightly in what I'm trying to do here.
I want to try the kimchi first. I've never had cheese and mussels together. Interesting combo.
Which is to note that it is interesting that she is in this position as a feederism expert. She's out here still making content surrounding her food and the things she eats. And it's very clear from how the docu-series talks about feederism that for some men and or women, I suppose, that are participating in this particular fetish, just watching people eat specific kind of foods and things like that can be a part of that kind of content. And that's not to say that Rosie is out here making content in the same way or selling opportunities to see her eat certain kinds of foods. But it is to say, for somebody who's wanted to separate herself so much from feederism, that it's interesting that while she's in Las Vegas to make this docuseries, to be a part of it and be interviewed for it, she's still centering her content around the things that she's eating. Outside of that, believe it or not, and it might be hard to believe based on the past couple of weeks of Rosie talking since the trailer came out, but believe it or not, between her time filming in Las Vegas all the way up until the day the trailer came out, Rosie was actually fairly good at being quiet about what was going on with this documentary. She didn't mention anything about it, and I would know I've watched a good chunk of her content. But that did, in fact, change the day that the trailer dropped. She shared the trailer to her community tab here on YouTube, and then she followed it up by doing a live stream. A live stream the day following her making a post on social media saying she didn't think she could go through with live streaming, a promise she had made to her audience because she was experiencing a lot of pain or something along those lines. But Rosie did this live stream and she was amped. I think part of it, she even talked about how June 10th, the day that this docuseries was supposed to come out, she's like, it's gonna be lit.
June 10th about to be lit, hey!
It felt like she really thought that this was her big break into stardom, that this was her big break onto mainstream TV, and immediately I think a lot of us caught that the vibes were off. In this live stream, she went on to talk about how she was going to have a subplot in this series.
And I have my own plot in it. So, okay, I'm a little out of the loop. What's this trailer coming out on? So, first of all, I have it linked to the pinned comment. I have it on my YouTube community tab post. I shared the reel on my Instagram. I stitched the TikTok. Choose your platform. It's 1 minute and 30 seconds. Come back once you watch it. Yeah, I made it very easily accessible for y'all. So please give it a watch. Obviously, I haven't seen it yet. And I don't want to share too many details about like the actual production or project itself. Because, first of all, I want to see it. And second of all, there's like a lot of stories and a lot of experiences that are very important and need to be highlighted and need to be talked about. Because I did get a comment that I want to address off rip. Because somebody was like, you said on your live you would never go to the Pearadise house, da-da-da-da. I did say that. And I meant it. So if you want to know more, we can debrief that after the documentary's happened, and you can watch it. There's a reason I'm involved, and that's all I'm going to say. And thank you, Farah. Congratulations on your feature in the documentary. This is an interesting topic and a diabolical man behind that mansion. And I just want to say this too, because like I'm seeing the comments on the trailer, like I'm not reading them in depth, to be honest. I've had to just skim them. I really don't want people's disdain for me to impact the stories that the victims are sharing in the documentary. I really hope that that is respected. And like I mean that with my full chest. I'm excited to be a part of it in the way that I can help highlight the stories and share my experiences in relation to my own story, which I do have linked in the description as well. Also, I also have the trailer linked in the description. And I went ahead and I also linked, in case anybody who's newer, who isn't aware, I linked my original podcast interview that is like kind of how I became involved in this project.
Who knows what she meant by that, and we'll talk about if she ended up having a subplot or not. But to me, what that suggests is that there's going to be some part of this that's about you. That's about your specific story, something that happened to you specifically. And a lot of people thought that that was weird because she eventually herself even said, no, I've never been to the Pearadise house. People were calling her out because in the past she had said that she would never visit that place. And she was like, yeah, I haven't been there. And Stefan's never done anything to me directly outside of some DMs that she shared about their interactions. So people were really starting to catch on to Rosie's nonsense, and it started to really feel like all the way around Rosie was making this about her, was trying to insert herself into things that were not about her. As more people started pushing back on Rosie's involvement in this, I should also say, like, people were commenting on the Investigation Discovery trailer, talking about, like, how could you include Rosie? Like, what could she possibly have to add to this? She's not a reliable narrator. She's not a reliable person to have as a part of your documentary. So Rosie was really getting a lot of pushback. Then she started lashing out. In particular, she made a video about the lolcow universe and or specifically Keemstar, the guy who runs all of the lolcow universe shows. A number of people involved in the documentary, including victims, including Stefan, were going onto the lolcow bus panels and talking about their experiences at the Pearadise house and talking about their problems with Stefan, or in Stefan's case, he was defending himself. And Rosie had a lot of criticism for Keemstar in the LCU, and rightfully so. I think, in general, being critical of Keemstar and the existence of him on the internet, I think is beyond fair, right? Like, let me just say that specifically. But the problem that a lot of people took with her video is that Rosie was trying to direct when and where and how other people told their stories. In fact, she full-on said that everybody needed to stop talking about the subject until the documentary aired.
Everybody's talking too much. And that's annoying me. Number one. Everyone is. Everyone is. And you know what? A little bit of me too right now. Let's be real on that, all right?
And of course, Rosie took none of her own advice. How could she? Why would she do that? But she was seemingly trying to keep others from talking about it in spaces that she wasn't a part of. It seemed like she was upset that she wasn't being included in these conversations. And that's when eventually, like in the next day or two after she posted that video, she found herself in a TikTok live panel that was hosted by Stefan on his TikTok account. And she was talking with him on the live stream. And to be clear, Rosie, rightfully so, has referred to this man as a predator, has talked about the allegations against him and how serious they are, and yet she still chose to get onto his live stream on his platform and try to clear the air with him.
The first thing I want to say out the gate, because it seems to me it's pretty clear that you haven't seen anything that's come directly from me and my content, because I don't involve myself with the LCU. I think that shit's disgusting. I will never involve myself in the LCU. And I am frustrated that all of this is even involved in that universe, because that's grimy garbage content. I called it moldy hot dog water, to be specific. I don't want to be involved in it at all. But I want to state that this entire time through this process, the timing of Shay's passing is horrible. Regardless of my opinion of you or any person involved, anyone who knew Shay is a human being and deserves grace and time to mourn. And this is a layer of complexity that is deeply upsetting. And I had no relationship with Shay. I never interacted with her. I barely even knew about her or of her. So I won't speak on her as a person, and I haven't this entire time. And I will never want to disrespect that. And regardless of my opinion of you, which I have many, I'm the kind of person where if I say something behind your back, I'll say it to your face, right? I'm not going to sit here and pretend that, like, you know, you're someone I would want to be friends with. But I will sit here and say that you're a human being, and that was someone that was close to you, and you have your right to your grief. At the same time, in that grief, I think there's room for grace. However, I find it interesting that that was your first response to when you were acting out in your wrongdoing towards the situation, toward me specifically. Because yes, you are grieving, and there is a layer there where I find understanding, and I don't ever want to discredit that. But I do want to point out that that was your first response, instead of just holding the accountability for your actions that I do have in screen recording, that the words you did say when you did not have the information.
In addition to trying to clear the air with him, she gave him grace for grieving Shay, a woman who actually was featured in the docu-series, but has unfortunately, sadly passed away since they filmed the docu-series. And during this conversation, multiple times, Stefan touted that they were adults who were able to sit down and have respectful conversation. As you can imagine, this frustrated the women who had been negatively harmed and impacted by Stefan. This included Pau, who is a woman that was heavily featured in the docu-series. Pau ended up dragging Rosie for filth in a TikTok live stream, talking about how Rosie doesn't serve as a voice to the women who were impacted by him, doesn't serve as a voice to the victims, and insisted that Rosie was actually doing more harm than good when it came to her participation in Stefan's live stream.
This is the stuff that we can talk on TikTok and that we can say out loud, but there's way more serious stuff. And I don't think you understand the gravity of it by going to him, because it's like, you are not a professional mediator or anything like that to resolve this situation. And this has been going for years and years and years. There's so many people involved, and we don't want you to speak for us. And I feel like you were trying to speak for us. I don't give you permission to speak for me.
Eventually, Rosie had her own live stream finally on her own YouTube platform, where she had been pretty silent following a couple videos about Keemstar and Girl World. She attempted to apologize. However, Rosie's apology was not made without bringing up her own trauma, and in fact, like, specifically stated that she wished that people would treat her trauma with the same level of respect as they were treating the victims of Stefan.
I just wish that all of these people who are giving these victims the respect they deserve would just hold a modicum of respect for my trauma. That's all.
And in the 24 hours leading up to the premiere of the docuseries, Rosie doubled down on her making her trauma the most important thing about this conversation. And in an Instagram story, she went on to talk about how just because she wasn't a victim of Stefan, that doesn't mean that she didn't have her own trauma.
Just because I'm not a victim of Stefan does not mean I am not a victim of sexual assault and exploitation in my past. Just because you may not understand why I'm in the dock does not mean that I don't have a right to be there. I'm doing the best that I can from everything that's happened in the past couple weeks, to not make problems for anybody else. I just wish someone gave a singular fuck about the fact that I'm a person with trauma too, and that trauma is real. The past several days, I have gone out of my way to shut the fuck up, because it doesn't matter what I do. I am being relentlessly attacked. I just saw a comment on a video that had nothing to do with me, that was about me and how I'm making everything about me when I wasn't even in the video. Girl World is using this opportunity to make me out to look like a fucking monster while creating the problem. I just did not anticipate certain parts of this. I'm not talking about the live stream stuff and all that. I've said what I've said on that, and I'm culpable in that aspect. I'm talking specifically about how people keep saying actual victims. Watching people twist some of my most personal trauma into how I'm a liar. Like, I think the big one I saw was when I was in those streams and I was being just barraged with hate. People were saying that I lied about, like, I said that I was basically raped over the internet, like, that all this stuff, when they took a real traumatic experience out of context. In the We're All Insane podcast interview, I shared the story about what I believe was the first attack of my cyber stalker. How he blackmailed me, used the fact that I was, an ex-Mormon, afraid of my parents finding out that I was posting illicit photos online at the time, because my parents and I hadn't had a lot of conversations, and I genuinely was afraid they would disown me. And he collected my family's information, and he coerced me into doing something I've never even told a therapist about. And that is just one of the things he did during an 8-year period. That story is real. I've never fucking lied about that or any of my fucking trauma. And I'm reaching to a point, I'm not engaging in reaction content about me. I'm doing my best to avoid it, but I'm getting so much in my DMs and in my own comments. People who've put my cousin's names in my comments, who, by the way, is the man currently serving 30 years in federal prison for his shit with CSAM. Look, I get that I'm controversial and that I've recently fucked up. I'm just a person, man. This is real. This is real. I'm not lying. And I'm trying to do everything I can to not make things worse. But it's like I'm constantly caught between this push and pull of, like, wanting to speak out and defend myself, and wanting to stay quiet to not cause more problems. All I know is I'm really anxious about tonight. Just because Stefan isn't the one that hurt me doesn't mean I wasn't hurt. Just because that isn't part of my story doesn't mean that I had something to add. Well, I don't know, man.
I just want to thank everyone who has sent kind messages. I know I spent a lot of time talking about the bullshit, but I appreciate everyone who has sent me kind messages of support or just checking in. I really appreciate it. The doc drops in about an hour and a half, and I think more than anything, I'm just anxious for everything to come after, but it'll be nice to just finally know. So we'll see. I hope that everybody tunes in and we all find out together. I'm exhausted. Let's fucking go, I guess. Well, I just finished watching a docu-series with my boyfriend. I have a lot of thoughts just about the documentary, stories that were shared. It's kind of crazy seeing, like, Stefan directly say something on camera for the documentary that 100% contradicts something he said to my face last week. That was crazy. I first just want to say, like, I don't want to like go too in depth about anything because I want you guys to watch it. I think everyone should watch it and form their own opinions. I wasn't super surprised by how much I was in the documentary because of what I was told. I guess I had hoped they would provide a little more context to some things that just ended up not going with the flow of the story. I'm gonna hold off because there's like a lot of stuff I want to say, but I really appreciate that the stories of these victims were heard. And you know, someone who was watching all this stuff go down in 2021 and onward, I'm just glad that this entire story is being talked about on a mainstream front. I hope all of you watched the documentary. I think it was very well made. I do have critiques, especially on how certain things were handled. Again, nothing has to do with me, right? But like everything to do with just like, you know, with like the people who have passed and everything. I have some thoughts about that, but I want to hold off. And I also think like everyone else involved should have their time to share their thoughts and react and everything. This has just been an insane couple of weeks, and I was so anxious and I was so just overwhelmed by the unknown. Now I'm just sitting here kind of like, oh, I freaking out so much. I don't even know. There's so much I want to talk about and say because like, yeah, but I hope you guys still watch it. It's a really important story that needs to be heard.
I'm not really here to have a conversation about the validity of Rosie's trauma, her actual lived experiences or anything like that. To be clear, I only can go based off of what she has shared herself on the internet, which has at times been inconsistent. However, I was not present for any of it, so I couldn't tell you one way or the other ultimately what's going on with it. And to be honest, it doesn't matter in this case, because even if everything she has to say about her trauma is real and true, none of that makes it okay for her to center that trauma above the people who are featured in this documentary. And in fact, I think most people were upset with her not because she was struggling with her own trauma, but because she was using that trauma to deflect when it came to apologizing for getting on a live stream panel with Stefan, and also essentially taking away from the conversations that were meant to be had surrounding the women who were victims of Stefan. It's not her trauma that's the problem, it's her centering her trauma and conversations that are not about her trauma that's the problem. And then yeah, the docuseries premiered last night, and all of that talking she did, all of that centering of herself that she did in this situation for the past 2-3 weeks was for 1 minute and 14 seconds of screen time out of 126 minutes total that this documentary ran. So I'm sure you might be wondering, what was it that she talked about during that time on screen? Was it her subplot? Was it her own personal trauma? Well, no. None of that at all, actually. Her first 10 seconds in the docuseries was at the very beginning of the first episode, where they used her soundbite about the "you don't know the price that you pay" or whatever it was. I can't believe I can't get it exactly right.
He's selling a fantasy. You'll be loved here, you'll be worshipped like a goddess. But they don't tell you the price that you pay.
So basically the soundbite we have heard in the trailer that has continued to, in Rosie's words, be memed around the internet. We never get more context for that. We never find out what the price you pay is. We never find out who they is. I don't know what that was in reference to, but it was a good soundbite for them to use in the trailer to add a lot of dramatic effect. And it definitely does help set the tone for the documentary, and I'm sure that's why they put it at the very beginning. Otherwise, she didn't appear at all in the first episode. In the second episode, she was on screen for about 25 seconds.
On Phoebe, there's levels of extremism. Feeders can write out like their own little role plays and desires. being fed to the last breath, the getting to 1,000 pounds. For some, it is a desire to get them in that bed so they never get out. Death feederism is the concept of feeding someone to the point that they die.
When they shared her name at the bottom of the screen, they added the title of feederism expert and content creator, and also shared her social media handle. And basically, she was brought on to be a feederism expert. The whole 25 seconds that she's in this particular episode is her giving background information about feederism. And I think that's fair. She has done adult content, she's done sex work, she has participated in the feeder community. She absolutely is qualified to explain what those things mean. Outside of it, there was one thing about episode 2 that really stuck out to me in regards to Stefan and his behavior. Throughout the series, there's a woman named Cece who shares her story of being assaulted by Stefan, and she also, throughout the series, talks about her twin sons and her relationship with Stefan. After Cece shares her story about Stefan assaulting her, Stefan comes on camera at one point and talks about how he had an adult conversation with Cece, how they sat down and talked about it like adults and found a resolution.
Whatever happened. There was a time when her and I really talked it out like adults. And we agreed that, like, everything was good, and we hugged it out and actually cried a little bit.
What made you cry?
I felt bad. Who wants to be accused of rape?
And it clicked for me in that moment that this was a pattern for him. And a part of that's because he talked the same exact way when he talked to Rosie on his live stream. He talked about them being able to sit down, have a respectful adult conversation. And there continued to be so many times during the docu-series where he would say, if you have a problem with me, I just want you to come talk to me. I just want to know if I did something to make you uncomfortable. And he says that a lot even in live streams to this day, and a lot of the live streams that I've seen him participate in. And in my opinion, that's not because he wants to take accountability for making somebody uncomfortable. I think it's because he wants to know what the narrative is, he wants to know what that information is, and he wants to try to control what that is. He wants to control that person's response to that information. Like, he wants to control how they might feel about that. He wants to be able to talk to them, try to convince them, no, that's not what happened. That's not, you don't understand, that's not what happened. And then he also wants to be able to control the narrative getting out. That's my opinion, just based on seeing him talk about it many, many, many times. And like I said, I noticed that because he talked about it in a very similar way when he talked about Rosie. And he even after that live stream went on to talk about how he and Rosie were good because they had those conversations. And honestly, Pau clocked that in the live stream panel that she did on Xiomara's TikTok channel where Rosie was present. And that's most likely because Pau's seen that before, heard it before, and knew that it's just a pattern of his behavior. It's part of how he takes control of the situation. He doesn't want people to go talk out loud to the public, to other people, about the ways that he's harmed them. He wants you to come to him directly so that he can try to make it better or cover it up or hide it or not let the information get out. In the third episode, Rosie has the remainder of her screen time, the most screen time she has in the entire docuseries. And that time is dedicated to her discussing the online response to Xiomara disappearing after being sent to the ER from the Pearadise house.
She disappeared for a few months. People within the plus-size community were like, is she alive? Is she dead? Is she alive? Is she dead? She went into a coma. And when she came out of it, she started trying to document more of her health journey. She's been in rehab to regain her mobility. In the beginning, she was sharing her journey day after day after day, once or twice a day.
No mames, bro.
But then she started going live on TikTok and mukbanging, basically, from DoorDash in the hospital bed.
The one thing that struck me as interesting in hearing Rosie talk about Xiomara in this situation is that she described Xiomara as eating on TikTok Live as doing mukbangs or mukbanging. And I think I just found that particularly interesting, knowing that Rosie herself doesn't classify her own eating on her own live streams as participating in mukbangs, as doing mukbangs, as making a certain type of content that might appeal to feeders. I also thought it was interesting that she talked about the ways that Xiomara was trying to work on her health and trying to document her health, but ultimately ended up falling back into the eating and stuff on TikTok. And I wonder if any of that felt salient to her as she was saying those things, as she was talking about that, because when Rosie initially left the feeder community, and I know a lot about this because she was in my DMs at the time, and she was crediting me for her desire to leave feederism, crediting me for wanting to start a YouTube channel. And when she started her YouTube channel, at first she was documenting her movement in terms of like working on a health journey. And if you keep up with her content now, you know she doesn't even talk about her health anymore, and most of her content is just her eating on camera. But yeah, mostly Rosie was in episode 3 to help narrate what the online discourse was around Xiomara's disappearance. Outside of Rosie's participation in episode 3, the other thing that I want to mention about episode 3 is that they spend a good chunk of it talking about the passing of a woman named Cass who lived in the house for a very long time and was in a relationship with Stefan. Many of the women who were a part of this docu-series blamed Stefan for Cass's health deteriorating. They talked about the ways that he encouraged participation in feederism content. I think one of them even mentioned that like he filmed feeder content with her that she would sell online. Stefan was getting a lot of blame from other women for the state of Cass's health, which is essentially the reason she ended up passing away. And as I previously mentioned, there's another woman named Shay who was a part of this documentary that has since passed away from other health-related reasons. Shay is the woman that Rosie was saying that people should give Stefan grace for as he was grieving her passing and things like that. And I think now having the additional context from hearing these women talk about their friend Cass, who they lived with, interacted with, and hearing about the ways that they felt Stefan was responsible for her passing, it might make a lot of sense why a number of them were upset about Rosie getting onto the internet and saying that people needed to give Stefan grace to grieve Shay's passing. I think it's also important to note that one of Powell's points in that live stream with Rosie was not just what I mentioned, but also that by giving into this narrative about giving him grace to grieve and things like that, he was able to deflect from being held accountable for actual things, which they had mentioned was part of his behavior, a pattern of his behavior, not just with Shay, but now also clearly something with Cass as well. And I think that's all really important to keep in mind, and also just like really enrages me about Rosie going on that live stream with him and saying all of that. Like, probably makes me even more upset with her about that live stream, now having the context of everything surrounding Cass as well. But yeah, that 1 minute and 14 seconds, that was it. That's all she did in this. Her subplot was essentially being a feederism expert and narrating the online discourse surrounding Xiomara. Arguably, two things that they probably could have found several other people to do. I mean, they included other online commentary channels, like even like Obese to Beast, who could have came in and talked about Xiomara's story. So I don't know what Rosie thought her subplot was going to be, because we didn't even get answers to what the price you pay is, you know? Like, we've spent weeks sitting here listening to Rosie acting like this was going to make her some kind of big star. It was going to be some kind of big break for her. Just for her role in all of this to be her narrating some things that probably anybody could have essentially narrated. I genuinely don't think people would be as mad or upset or frustrated with Rosie had she presented herself from the get-go in this situation as somebody who is simply providing information about what feederism is. Like I've already suggested, I think that's a totally plausible thing for her to speak on. And the documentary did talk about feederism and Stefan's role in that, and the ways that the women of the Pearadise house participated in feederism content. So Rosie certainly can speak to that from her own experience. My remaining question is, why did she think she was going to be some kind of subplot? And the most reasonable explanation in my head is that they probably did ask her a lot of questions about her own personal experience regarding feederism and the feeder community. I feel like some aspect of that was probably to vet how much she actually knew about the community and to see if she actually was like the expert that she claimed to be. And I would also guess that some of that was to see if there was like any overlap that they could use in terms of their own storytelling. And I think it just turns out that none of it was relevant to the rest of the story that they were trying to tell. Because at the end of the day, this is a story. Some aspect of this is entertainment, as sad as that is when it comes to like such serious triggering topics, right? Like at some point there's still an entertainment company. ID and HBO and Discovery Plus, they're all like trying to get people to watch these things. And so I think what also probably happened is that her stuff just wasn't applicable. They asked a lot of questions just to see if it was, to see if it led anywhere, and it didn't. But as many of us are now very accustomed to and have witnessed from Rosie many times, she just thinks that everything's about her. And I think when she got asked all of these questions about her experience, I'm sure she was thinking, wow, yeah, they wanted to know so much about me. There's going to be so much about me in this documentary. They asked me so many questions about me. How could they not use that? I'm the most interesting person in the world. But now she's finding out, probably not true. Or at least not true in regards to any of this being relevant to the story about Pearadise and Stefan and the multiple women he harmed. It turns out she probably should have just taken her own advice and not opened her mouth about the documentary until it aired, because now she looks real silly because she spent weeks talking about her trauma, her subplot, all the ways that she thought this was going to be about her. So my only remaining advice to Rosie, if she really wants something that would actually be helpful, is to log off. I don't think she's going to receive that message because she really thinks that like continuing to come on the internet is important to stick it to haters. She thinks that like if people successfully get her to not come on the internet, then they've won. But that's not why I'm saying this. I'm saying this because the attention-seeking, self-centering behavior is clearly not helping you heal your trauma. And while you're coming onto the internet doing all of this, you're hurting other people who were impacted by Stefan in the meantime between time. Rosie's been on the internet for a long time. The internet hasn't managed to heal her thus far, and I don't imagine it's going to in the future either. The internet seems to be a really unhealthy place for Rosie to be, and I think she would be better off at least taking some kind of legitimate break where she was truly working on her mental health and processing all of this trauma she has before coming back and trying to engage with the internet. When it comes to the docu-series, I do hope everybody does take the time to hear the stories of Stefan's actual victims. I just don't want Rosie's nonsense to get in the way of a story that actually needs to be heard. Stefan is vile. And not only is it wild to me that Rosie went on a live stream panel knowing the type of documentary she participated in, it's also wild to me that people like Amber Lynn and people from the Lolcow universe have gone on to panels with this man. I mean, the Lolcow universe fully invited this man to be on multiple live streams with them. Tech Protect from Lolcow Bus was fully at the Pearadise house live streaming for the premiere of this documentary. It's wild to me that people continue to prop this disgusting man up. Like I said, I really feel like TikTok needs to do something about his platform, and how he uses TikTok to perpetuate these things, to get people to continue coming to his house in Las Vegas. I just think that there needs to be something done. And obviously a lot of that is outside of my scope of what I'm capable of doing. But I certainly think a place to start is to get more ears on the stories of the people who've been negatively impacted by him. So that's all I have for today. I know it was a bit of a heavy video in comparison to some things over here, but I think important nonetheless. So thank you so much for watching today. If you did and you're brand new to my channel, consider subscribing down below. Hit the bell button so you get a notification every single time I post a new video. Make sure to leave me a comment, hit like, click share, and follow me on all my social media. I'll see you all next time. Bye!